Greg Marker, how are you, my friend? It's great to see you.
It is great to be back.
Yeah,
It's always good to talk with you.
I always say you are hands down always the best dressed podcast guest I ever have on this show.
It just ends up where I have a meeting before we meet and just got to wear a tie. So
No worries. Yeah, I'm going to pretend that you dressed up for this. So no.
I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, can you delete that out? I came with a tie out of respect for you, actually. So.
Exactly. No, I'm just playing. No, I appreciate your time. It's always great to talk to you, and I'm excited we got some specific topics that we're going to dive into here, for it. So, listeners, if you haven't heard it all before, I'm with Craig Marker. I've known Craig for a while now, going back to his time with StrongFirst, and he's a professor, and we went into some deep work that we've went through the last couple episodes on different protocols, different really kind of diving into the details and the science behind strength and conditioning, specifically with fission and fusion, which is a super fascinating topic. I'm really excited to kind of dive in again, but if you want to go back and listen to those, please go do so. But we're going to kind of get a little bit into it right off the bat here, for everybody. So, Craig, I guess to kick off, actually, if you could just quickly kind of reintroduce yourself, kind of what you do, with your day to day, and then we'll get into some of the work that you've really done with the fission and fusion protocols for yourself, as well as what you've seen in your research.
Yeah. So day to day, I'm a professor. I get to work with outstanding faculty, students, and I teach research methods and statistics. So I think that most people would shy away from those topics, but I just loved it. I loved learning about as much as I could in different areas. I just remember going through my bachelor's degree and just wanting to read the nutrition literature and reading the, sports sciences and those type of things. And I teach in health sciences programs, so I get to touch upon a lot of different areas and learn a lot of different research areas. So it's just fun for me. And I love reading research articles. I love getting into it. I think if I just read the headlines or the abstract, I get a picture that it's not a full picture. So I like to read the whole article, and kind of get it. Each one is a piece of the puzzle for me, and I kind of pull it together and okay, I'll put that to the side. Maybe that's something useful to take sometime. Let's see what else I find on this different topic. So I love experimenting. So self-experimentation is my fun area. So
the sentence "I love reading research papers" is so slightly oxymoronic for most of us in there. So I'm so happy there's people like you that really enjoy doing it, because that's where you really get down into exactly what's going on with all this stuff that we're trying to understand, specifically with the human body and the work with nutrition, which can get so just complicated and just so confusing in so many ways. So to be able to dissect those papers down into actually knowing what's going on. Appreciate you so much right off that. So,
and I guess it's like a mystery novel to me in a way. Mm-hmm. And, one of my main areas was individual differences, and, looking at, I'll try to describe this sort of picture, but, I was looking at interventions and if you look at all the trajectories of change, some people are going up really high, some people are getting better in slighter, still getting better, but not as much. And then some people were not getting as doing as well in this intervention. And the average shows this intervention works, but then there are all these individual differences. For some, this intervention didn't work. And I was fascinated by what makes an intervention work really well for some people and what makes an intervention not work so well for others. And I think with diets, the diet literature is just crazy on how many different diets, and they all seem to work to some extent, but I think some diets might be optimal for me and some diets might be optimal for you. And it just depends. And it's that individual differences that are really interesting.
Is there anything, I know there's not one specific diet that really works, for everybody, but is there one reason you think why it could be so different from one person to another? Is it just because, how we were born? Obviously a 30-year-old person, they've been through 30 years of different, metabolic work every single day of going on. So is that really the thing that we need to understand going in, specifically on the nutrition side? Because it seems to me like the strength and conditioning side is a little bit more cut and dry, where you can kind of understand a little bit more, but diet, depending on, because I mean, with processed foods and stuff, like sometimes we don't even know half of what the hell is actually in that stuff and what's going on there. So am I on the right track with that? Of like, it's just, everybody's just metabolism and where they kind of, their foundation is different?
I think so, yeah. And to take it to the strength and conditioning literature, I think Dan John said something that any program will work for some amount of time. And it may not be the optimal program, but I think maybe that shift, whatever your shift is, like my mom's favorite diet, and I apologize, Mom, for calling you out on this, was like a bacon and grapefruit diet. And every morning she'd have bacon and grapefruit. And it, like, they had some theory behind the acid in the grapefruit with the fat, and the bacon would activate fat metabolism, but it worked. And I think it worked because it's just something radically different. And any sort of stress on the body changes the way the body responds to it, and probably in a positive way. So I think part of why they work is just that shift in changing something up, and then our body's responding to the sort of the stressor of a new diet or new change. But you know, if I, like you said, with processed foods, and I think there are probably some good guidelines, and you know, if I recommended, like, there's somebody who did the croissant diet, and I don't know if you've heard of that, but the idea was he was saying butter is a much better fat than processed oils, and it worked really well for him. And you know, again, I think it was just a big change in his life, and all he ate was croissants. And you know, we could probably prescribe that, but I think there are probably much better guidelines than something like I just gave. But
it's funny. I think one of the first guys I remember talking about intermittent fasting, you know, because I did intermittent fasting for a long time, and I think it's a very good thing. But where most people see that initial results from intermittent fasting, it's because you're not eating as much. So it's actually, you're getting into, it's a way to get into a calorie deficit. So it's all good. You can go on a million different paths to get there, but you're still going to the same parking lot eventually to get there, you know, from there. So with the research that you've seen specifically with nutrition and strength, is there a certain time frame that you usually like to see, like this, like, is there like with case studies? Is it, because I know a lot of people are, oh, I feel great after this, but it's only been a month. Like, is it, do you look like a year out? Do you look 6 months, or is it longer than that? Or
I mean, ideally, it'd be nice if research looked at that a bit more. And, you know, I think the further out we get with research, they're looking more correlational and, you know, asking people, you know, what did you eat, rather than the randomized control type trial. I think randomized control trials, just because of attrition, you just start losing people. They do, you know, a month or 6 week type studies. So it's really hard to, you know, control for something for months on end. And that's gets to be very expensive to keep all the people in that study. I mean, in an ideal world, it would be nice to look at long-term effects of diets, and we don't do enough of that, I'm sure.
Okay. Is there anything specific that you're doing a lot of research on right now?
It sort of personal type things, like, you know, like you mentioned, the fission and fusion type protocols and those type of things. Like, that's what I'm kind of testing on myself right now. But you know, not any sort of particular controlled study or anything along those lines.
Okay. Well, let's dive into the fission and fusion a little bit more. You know, the first time that you brought this up to me when we were on the Breakthrough Secrets podcast, it's fascinating. It's very interesting, the breakdown of it. And but still, it's very deep. It can go over your head a lot from there. So if you could explain a little bit for us, like, what is fission versus fusion, you know, protocol, what does it look like? And then we'll kind of dive into some of the programming of it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to make it any better. I might make it worse. But
maybe it's like the third time I hear it, it'll finally get into my head.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons, like you mentioned, intermittent fasting, and, you know, one of the reasons that diet is thought to work is that fast period that we have. What we're doing is allowing the body to get into a state of energy deprivation that triggers signals telling your body, hey, we're running out of energy, let's mobilize fat stores and those type of things. But then also to kind of, it gives a chance to repair and clean up. If we're eating all the time, we don't have, you know, we're storing and we're utilizing the fuel, but we don't have as much time to clean up and restore. So fasting is really good at helping those cleanup processes and autophagy, you know, cleaning up cells that are kind of mucking up the system, that don't, you know, have good mitochondria, or I'm sorry, that don't have good DNA or have DNA damage. We can get rid of that. So, you know, some of the, you know, theories with dementia and different aging type of things, like There's a lot of research on senolytics right now, which are basically getting rid of bad brain cells. And, the theory behind that is if we can clean up the cells that are not good, those cells, well, the cells that are not so great, are not living and also causing damage through toxicity of the cells around them, and that's what's leading to broader dementia and broader issues in the brain. So senolytics are helping clean up that process. So there are a lot of senolytics that are being worked on, and helping the idea of, as we age, getting rid of those cells in the brain that we don't need, that are defective. Same thing goes with the body. When we think of our, cells, we want to have that cellular repair process. So we want to clean up those type of cells. So fasting is great at that. And, I think our 16, 18-hour fast is good. It starts that process. The more damage we have, the more we might have to do that. But that's that process of cleaning up. Specifically, that idea of mitochondria that are damaged or defective, and I'm sure everybody understands this that's listening. Mitochondria create ATP, our main energy source. So if our mitochondria are like a factory that's not very efficient, it's putting out a lot of reactive oxidative species that are can cause damage throughout the body. We don't want that type of mitochondria. We want, the ones that are very efficient and running smoothly. So there's a process of mitochondria that they've go through fission and fusion. They basically break into smaller parts. Some of the smaller parts will have defective components to it. And that goes through a process of mitophagy, or killing off those damaged parts. And then the healthy parts are small and inefficient, but if they fuse with other healthy parts, they become much more efficient mitochondria. So it's almost, if you've got a business, this is an analogy I'm coming off the top of my head, but if you've got a business, you get rid of some of the parts that aren't producing as well, and sell them off, and then you merge with another business that's doing really, really well, you've got a much more sustainable business, or something along those lines. So mitochondria, they go through fission, break off the bad parts. Those bad parts hopefully get eaten up and go through a normal process, and then they fuse with better, more healthy mitochondria. So that process is going on all the time through our daily lives. What I'm trying to do with the fission fusion protocol is sort of exacerbate that process. So on fission days, things that trigger fission are, things like fasting. That's causing, that cleanup process. So when we fast, NAD supplements are really popular right now, and that's NAD takes the electron.
NED?
NAD. Yep. And they basically are like the cars that take electrons through the mitochondria. And if you don't have enough, then you can have electrons getting free and kind of releasing and causing damage. NAD is also responsible for activating, I'm sorry for all the terminology. I'm not really trying to give too much terminology, but just happens. Activating sirtuins, which there are multiple sirtuins, but they basically are fixing things. So they're fixing DNA, they're fixing, different components of the mitochondrium. And so like if you have DNA damage, SIRT6 is a big one right now. They're looking at that, might repair some of that DNA damage. So the NAD is used, gosh, I'm going way off topic here, but no, I'll try to bring it all together again.
Sure.
But the NAD is used in the mitochondrium, and it's the little cars that bring the electrons. It's also used in the repair process. So what we want to do is, when we fast, we help that NAD, we create more of this imbalance, and we're creating and we're repairing mitochondria DNA. We're also creating this fission process. So all of these things are really good when we fast. The other things that bring about this is, again, another term, AMPK, and this is an enzyme. And when we exercise, AMPK comes about. So especially intense exercise where we we basically drain the ATP as quickly as possible. That triggers AMPK, which then triggers this, again, this process of cleaning things up. So one of the benefits of like high intensity type exercise is also the body says, maybe the simplest way to say it, the body says, oh crap, we're using a lot of energy. We got to create more mitochondria and start going through fission to create more mitochondria. So AMPK also triggers that pathway. So fasting, AMPK, there are some supplements that are, found through research that have been, thought to kind of get at help with the NAD, also help with AMPK. So this is, I don't want to go too deep into supplements, but like apigenin blocks an enzyme that breaks down NAD. And so apigenin is found in maybe onions. I might be wrong on where it's found exactly, but that's something that I play around with apigenin. There's a couple of other substances that have been found in research, curcumin and other things that also are supposed to enhance this fission process.
Gotcha. Okay.
So let me try to wrap this fission.
Sure, please.
Try to make it make a little more sense. I'm sorry, I've
ruined it. Does. No, I think it does. It's incredible. There's so many good things here. It's so interesting to know exactly what's going on in our body in every single second of the day.
Yep. And I've ruined your podcast. I'm sure you've lost. It's just me and you now, so I can talk about whatever I want.
Whatever. And then
nobody else is paying attention anymore. But so on fission days, and this, I don't do this all the time, but I've been kind of diving deeper into this. I'll fast, and I try to fast a good amount of time before I exercise. So the day before, I might stop eating at 2 p.m. and I'll fast, and then I'll exercise at 4 a.m. the next morning. So I've got a good 14 hours of fasting in. I'll do high intensity. Don't tell Pavel I'm doing high intensity intervals. It's a little bit more like Pavel's training where A+A, but I'm also doing it. I'm just draining my ATP. So like I'm hitting a heavy bag, 15 seconds, as hard as I can until I'm almost losing power. I'm really having to struggle the last few seconds to keep my power. I'll rest 45 seconds, repeat it. I'll do that 8 rounds. Then I'll go and do a rower 500 meters as hard as I can for 2 minutes. I'll cycle on to something else, like some swings for 15 seconds on, 45 off. So I'm doing these sort of high intensity intervals, just draining my ATP, hopefully triggering AMPK. I don't really know what's going on in my body, but that's what I think is going on, to cause as much fission as possible. So I have a fast, I do high intensity sort of interval workout. It's repeats. I'm not trying to be so fatigued that I'm losing power. Every set I'm doing, I'm trying to keep as much power. And then from there, I'll either try to fast a few more hours because now I've activated the system. I don't want to shut it off right away.
Yep.
And this is where it gets a little weird, but I'll sometimes do a fat fast. And when we take in fats in our body, our PPAR Alpha, which is just, again, I'm sorry to bring up all these terms. When this is activated, it's causing triggering a lot of these things. So when we're fasting, we have PPAR Alpha. I can keep this active when I eat fats only. If I bring in protein and bring in carbs, I'll kind of throw this process off, but I can eat fats for the day and keep in fission. So I, again, will try to just eat fats for the day, and then I'll go home and eat like 2 o'clock. So I've kind of done a 24-hour fast, but I've been eating fat for a little bit of that time. The last.
Why does protein and carbs, why does that matter on that? What is within those that kind of puts you out of fission?
Yeah. So basically, if you, and I'll get into the fusion, what we do when we take in protein and carbs is we activate another pathway with the Mtor. And when Mtor is activated, AMPK is inhibited. So these things kind of go together. If we have high AMPK activation, Mtor is down. When we have high Mtor, AMPK is down. So I don't want to activate Mtor, and protein will activate Mtor. So that's why I stay away from protein.
Gotcha. So the fission piece, essentially, because the word you used a lot there was the cleanup, was really kind of taking out all of the shit that we don't need in our body, which is actually a really fascinating thing. So that piece is really, it's not about adding anything really to us. It's about just eliminating everything that's just kind of nasty and just kind of, plugging us up, in our health, and just clearing that out on a regular basis of getting in. So
exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And the power development, and the not losing power is very interesting, especially if anybody listening who's a coach, you should go check out Strong Endurance with Pavel. He explains a lot of the chemistry behind all of the ATP, and which was really fascinating to understand the different energy sources, which you're really tapping into here on Craig's. The one you said, the senolytics with the brain word, and so we have just like unused or just kind of unhealthy brain cells that are in there, and those are used to just clean those out. When you really feel the effect when you're doing this right, do you feel like, is it a difference in your energy? Is it a difference in your mental clarity? Like, is there specific things that you felt in response to having this on point?
So I think there's different stages, and I think you bring up an important point. If you're 25 years old, ignore everything I'm saying, like, because you're not really going to have that much damage. You're not going to have those, the mitochondria damage and things, as people age.
Right.
If you're somebody who's, older, and as you approach your 50s, 60s, 70s, like, you're going to have more and more of this damage. And especially the brain cells, like, you're going to have more reason to have senolytics and to kind of, more damaged cells. So I think it kind of it's related to age as well. So I don't know if I necessarily feel anything. I think when I first started the process, I started to feel like my endurance like increased greatly. And I think like I just made my mitochondria much more efficient. And after I cleaned out the damage, like, it just, like, my endurance was great all the time, it felt like. And it wasn't not definitely, of course my training's helping with that, but I'm thinking that process behind it was my mitochondria didn't have the damaged ones, didn't have the inefficient ones. And maybe it's a car that's an older car that's smoking and it's got burning oil and things like that, versus a much more efficient, fuel efficient car now that's burning much cleaner. My mitochondria feel like they're burning cleaner, and maybe I don't need to do it as much as I used to, or those type of things. But
Gotcha.
I think that it's kind of related to again, the wear and tear and age of your body, that you might need to do it more or less, and you'll feel more effects.
Gotcha. I think the car analogy is interesting because it's kind of like, if you do this, you might not feel the difference in performance like when you step on the gas, but it's the insurance behind it of you're working with a clean system. So it's almost like if it's helping you down the line, with it, you're not going to feel the immediate effects of like changing your program up, but it's really the insurance that you're putting into deposit in every single day. That's why you do this type of protocol.
Yep.
Yeah. With the fats, and you're just eating some fat. What are you eating that's just straight fat?
So I think the most palatable way is like some green tea with olive oil in it. And maybe that doesn't sound palatable at all.
My Italian genes are coming out right here. I can roll with that.
Yeah, I've got olive oil right under the desk, and like I can just pour some olive oil and some hot tea, and it's palatable. Fats have a lot of calories, so it's it's I'll talk about what to stay away from when I get to fusion, but like, yeah, I think olive oil is something I use quite a bit. I'll use a little bit of like C8 MCT oil, not full MCT, but like when it's kind of the C8 carbon.
Coconut oil at all, or?
Yeah, so coconut oil is pretty broad spectrum in the type of fats. So like the MCTs, like there's C8, C10, C12, and I'll kind of go towards the C8, which in research has been shown to be more effective at, getting turned into ketones and things along those lines. So I'll just kind of like, there's some straight C8 type of MCT oils that I'll kind of stick with, but.
Gotcha. Have you done, just staying on the fission for a little bit more, and your training, you're doing your training at the end of the fast from there, which I do a lot of times as well. I've just I just feel really good doing that. And I know it's effective. Have you tried with different times of working out within that fast before? Or has that just seemed like your go-to?
It just kind of worked out timing wise. In mornings is a good time for those type of training. So I really haven't adjusted it much, but I do, like you said, I feel pretty good. It doesn't feel like I need, maybe if I'm going to do like a marathon or something like that, I would need more food, but like, it feels like those type of intervals that I'm doing, where I'm trying to maintain power. I feel really good actually with the fast, being on the fast. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I just subconsciously have kind of done very similar to you, where I mean, usually last meal is 5 or 6, at night, and then I'm usually training about 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning from there, without even really thinking about it. But a fasted training, if people haven't utilized it before, I mean, sometimes it could take a little bit getting used to. You might not feel the energy jolt right off the bat, but especially if you're an early morning person, where it's not easy to get that meal in beforehand. You don't want like a bunch of breakfast sitting in your stomach. I
Yeah.
think it's something that everybody should work with. So I think this is an interesting protocol.
And I'm forgetting the person, but I wish I could reference him. But he does like continuous glucose measurement and insulin measurement, and
Mhm.
he looked at like 12 hours as that like window when all of a sudden insulin is just gone. And like I wonder, like if I did try to train a few hours after eating, I bet I probably wouldn't be as efficient because I've got the insulin. My body would probably get hungry faster. Like this, I can utilize my fats and have that as my fuel source. So
Interesting. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to be throwing olive oil in yet in my tea in the morning, but it does seem very interesting. So, okay. Now that's the one side of the coin, and then fusion is the other side. So what is fusion? Kind of how does that work in with it?
yeah, so I mean, if I did that every day, like I just if you don't help build the mitochondria back up, you'd be, like just like we wouldn't do a fast forever and ever. We want to have our days where we're kind of allowing our body to build back up. So on other days, I'll do what I call fusion days, but I'll do more strength training.
Okay.
I'm using this term kind of tongue in cheek, pamper my body. Like I'll eat afterwards. I'll have a good amount of protein after. I'll have like branched chain amino acids, like with especially leucine. And leucine triggers Mtor. And again, Mtor is sort of the opposite of AMPK. And so what that's doing is, kind of creating a growth environment for our body. If we're always in a growth environment, mTOR has been associated with cancer, and too much mTOR, if we're always in that growth phase, it can be damaging to our body too. But if I can vary it, and have mTOR days and AMPK days, like that's really useful. So I'll try to do that. And then something else that's been found in the literature on fusion is stearic acid, which is a carbon 18 type chain. It's found in cocoa butter. So dark chocolate on my fusion days is great.
Okay.
That's helping your mitochondria to fuse together, bringing all the good mitochondria together and creating super mitochondria. So chocolate is good for you on your fusion days.
You heard it here, folks. Go after it.
Yep. So,
Okay.
but yeah, that's kind of it. Like I talk about pampering my body, but yeah, you want to get a lot of protein, almost like a bodybuilder type of day, where you're making sure I get my branched chain amino acids and those type of things. I just don't want to do that every day. I kind of want to have those days where I, challenge and fast, and then other days where I'm eating and growing. So
okay. So when on your days of fission, when you're doing your high intensity based work and stuff, you're not eating right afterwards. You still have a few hours before you really get a meal in, right?
Yep. And yeah, the fat fasting is kind of like an extreme thing I've added recently, but otherwise I'd wait probably 3-4 hours before I ate anyways, for that day. So I'd fast a few more hours. So
Okay. Yeah, that's always an interesting thing with meal timing, because for the longest time, especially when I was early in the business, it was like you need to get protein in like 20 minutes afterwards, like get that shit. And now, like just from going through different protocols and talking to a lot of different experts, it's like that's not total bullshit, but it's like kind of half bullshit in there, where it's like as long as you're getting really your numbers by the end of the day of working in and hitting your bottom line, the meal timing around that really isn't that vital. It isn't that important. So I don't know if that was a great thing of like people trying to sell shakes after people are getting out of a workout, you know, to get in there. But I think that's an interesting thing that was around for so long that seems like it's starting to slowly get debunked over time.
Yep. One of my favorite quotes, Pavel has so many quotes that I could probably use, but he talked about, he talked about water bottles in the gym, but I think it could relate to protein shakes in the gym too, but you're not a baby. You don't need your bottle in the gym.
That sounds like Pavel.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Well, because he said for a while, like about not drinking water during training, like you don't need to drink water, with it. It's like, you might be a little thirsty on it, but like you actually maybe you know this better because my brain is foggy since strong endurance, but actually by drinking too much water during a strength workout, you're actually diminishing what you're trying to actually do, to get into your muscles.
That sounds, I remember that. I don't remember exact mechanism, but yep, I think so.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what's the breakdown of this? Like how many days are you doing more fission training? How many are you doing fusion?
I'm kind of to the phase where I do like every other day. So I'll do a fission, fusion. Weekends, I'll kind of just figure out whatever I want to do on weekends. But the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm doing fission, fusion days. I've tried it like 2-3 days. I've tried even like a week of like, I maybe even the last podcast, I was trying to do like 2 weeks of fission type of training and not fasting for 2 weeks straight, but like more fission type training, and then fusion type training for another 2 weeks. But I found just every other day seems to be the best protocol. I don't think the week worked that well for me on each of them. So I think daily, throwing them back and forth works well for me.
So like a 50-50 split pretty much on there.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So you said like you're doing with the fission days, you're doing like the heavy bag, like going all out 15-second type work. Are you adding anything in? Are you doing things like swings or anything like that?
Yeah. Okay. So, yep. So I'll usually start with some jump rope. Just because I pay a lot of attention to my heart rate on the heart rate monitoring. And I find that if I do that first, gets the heart rate up a little bit. Then when I hit the heavy bag, like I'll go kind of above my, threshold, and then, 45 seconds is enough to go below it. Again, 15 seconds all out. And so I'll be right above the threshold. If I don't do the jump rope beforehand, it takes like 2 rounds before I get above that threshold in that nice pattern. So that's why I do jump rope beforehand. Once I've got that heart rate up, then I'll just switch right from 8 rounds of heavy bag. I'll then switch to swings or go do the rower. Kind of rotate some different things in the bike. I hate the bike, but I'll sometimes do that. But, and I try to just, again, keep the power up on all the different activities. But
Okay. Jump rope is like my absolute, honestly, for body composition, I tell everybody like add in jump rope and just do that for getting some activity in. And that's going to be huge right there. And then your strength, your fusion days, are you doing just typical kind of push pull, kind of hinge, like carries, that type of stuff?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yep. Kind of the four movements, kind of an easy strength type protocol where I'm it's hitting everything almost every day. I kind of play around with what I'm more focused on. Sometimes I'm more focused on, we'll talk maybe later about different goals and, kind of programming and things. But, if I'm more focused on, deadlifts, I'll kind of create the deadlift program within there and, focus less on other things. But yeah, exactly. Every body part, every day type thing that I try.
Okay. So I'm going to segue into this. I know we're going to do this more towards the end, but you've got a pretty big milestone birthday coming up. So this is going to be the big.
I do. Yes. Yeah. Every time I turn, I was trying to do 5-year intervals, but especially the big 10-year intervals, I try to do these things. And these are just challenges that I've come up with over the years. So
first off, how old are you going to be?
I was trying to just flow right past that. You caught me on that. I'm going to be 50. So, yep.
Well, I feel like we're the same age. So I don't know if that speaks to, I look a little older. I'm going to say that you look really young because I feel, pretty young at my age. So that's amazing, man. you do not look like a 50-year-old man. I will just tell you that. So
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. So
okay.
yeah.
And you got some big goals, some big milestones that you're trying to hit on this, right?
Yeah. Yep. So I've been trying to hit a lot of these milestones, like every big, big birthday year. So, like one of them's 25 pull-ups. And years ago, Pavel wrote in Muscle Media, and, he talked about one of the, I think as the Marines have a 25 pull-up type test.
Mm-hmm.
And, I actually try to keep this one in my arsenal all the time. If you go to like fairs and you see like the, recruiters will be there, and sometimes I'll have like the Marines, and I kind of love doing this one, but they'll like give you a free t-shirt if you can do 25 pull-ups. So I always try to be just like ready to do 25 pull-ups at any point in time. So that one's, I've actually just did that one last week just to test it. And so I usually have that in my repertoire. And again, I'm pulling from things that are probably my strengths. Like pull-ups are like something feel like it's one of my relative strengths.
Okay.
The other thing is like, so like the Beast Tamer, you put a 48 kilogram kettlebell and strap it to your waist, and then you do a pull-up with it. I've done, I think 68 before. So I'm just milestone. I set it at 56 kilograms that I'm going to strap. I was going to try to do a 2 times body weight pull-up, but my elbows just can't handle it. So
okay.
I've tried to approach that goal a few times to 2 times, but it's a bit much. But the other things are kind of like at StrongFirst events, they usually have the benchmarks.
Yep.
So pressing a kettlebell that's half your body weight with one arm. So trying to do that with both my arms. That one I've tested not too long ago, and probably do that. 2.5 times deadlift. I'll try to do that. So some other ones that are a little outside of like strength. I tried to dunk a basketball. Like when I was young, I couldn't do it. So I think it was maybe when I turned 30 was the first time I could dunk a basketball. So I tried to do that. And that's very specialized training. I feel like swings get me much of the way there, but a lot of one-legged, like single leg deadlifts, single leg lunges, and a lot of explosive plyometric stuff is what I need to really do my dunk training. So I try to do that. I think we talked about that before. You can do it, right?
I wish. No, I've done it before once in high school with a like a Nerf ball. I believe Chris did it with a volleyball, before. Okay. So have you done any work or seen much of the stuff with Ben Patrick at all with the Athletic Truth group? Do you know about him?
No, I haven't.
Oh, Ben Patrick's phenomenal. He's this hashtag is the knees over toes guy.
Oh, I do. Okay. Then I was wondering, I was going to ask that. Yep. I have seen a little bit about him, but
yeah, when I spoke to Keegan a while ago, his partner from Australia, who is one of the pioneers of this program of really building resilience and athleticism. And the stuff that Ben is doing is really fascinating. And like everybody, like anything new that's coming out, there's some hate and shade that's trying to get thrown at him. But the results that he's getting, from people, specifically with the stuff of walking backwards, using a sled walking backwards for the cartilage repair in your knee, of just walking backwards 10 days. And then even just the body weight stuff, like his zero program of doing he calls it the KOT squat, which is the knees over toes. So it's like a deep lunge of going over and really building your anterior tibs and getting in, because he had like 7 knee surgeries before and went from not being able to walk to playing Division I basketball, and he was doing all these exercises with there. So you would be really, I think, fascinated by some of the stuff you could dive into with him.
I have to check that out more. The Nordic hamstring curls, like I saw something that he did with that. I've integrated those, and I love that. So that's
just the knees are so interesting, right? Because it's such a scapegoat into the body. Like, I had a tight ankle on one side, and if I don't, stretch it out, I feel it in my knee. It's the same with the hips and stuff. So by building kind of the rock solid armor around your knees is what he's doing. And, there's a million people that say, don't bring your knees over your toes or else you're a bad person and you're going to die. It's like, no, it's not really the case from there. And in this protocol, that's for the springiness of especially the anterior tib and stuff, is for specifically getting off the ground, slamming a ball home and stuff like that. I think that might be possibly in your repertoire.
Thank you. Thank you. That's awesome. Yep.
Yeah. So, okay. Are you planning on doing like all these, like do you want to do this like a special event day, or you just kind of want to check these off over a period of time?
I was trying to check them off in like a 6-month type window.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting, really interesting to try. I've thought about this, trying them all, and I don't know how much rest in between them, but if I could do them all in one day, I would be really excited. So maybe I'll try to give it. But I know, like, the pull-ups.
That's a lot of CNS work.
Yeah, the pull-ups worked well when I was, a little bit, a few pounds less. The deadlifts, I tend to gain a little bit more, so it'd be tough to kind of balance that and get it all in one day. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, well, that's one of the things I always said I loved about StrongFirst methods is kind of having those standards and setting it up, like being able to have a half body weight military press, on one side. If you can do both sides, even better, from there, but at least holding that standard level of strength. So I think this is, awesome. Anybody has a milestone of coming up on this, I think that's a phenomenal checklist to knock off.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And again, I probably cherry pick things I'm a little bit better at that I know I can accomplish. If I, really thought about it, I should come up with like a bench press or something, that I'm maybe not as good at. But yeah, I think people, if you can pick things that it's relatively attainable, I think that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember a while ago, it was probably like 10 years ago, but all I wanted to do was be able to still run a sub-6 mile. And I'm like, if you haven't ran before and you don't like to run, and then you go after and try and crush out a 550, it's like, I know it's, for runners who are, killing it, it's not that much. The marathoners do that on a per mile basis, but that is a freaking haul. And after I did that, I was like, all right, I checked that off for the day of getting in. So sometimes find one of them that's not in your repertoire and then just add that into the 51st birthday.
Yep. I actually have under a 20-minute 5K that I was thinking about trying. Okay. I'm going to try a 5K this coming month, and just I don't know where I'm at, but I was thinking about maybe I'll shoot for an under 20. It's been a while, but so.
Yeah, it's fun to kind of explore the different things. That's why we get strong, right? Is to carry over. One of my favorite people to talk to, I just had on the podcast, was John Parker. He's just one of the most recent beast tamers.
He's strong.
So kind of super light, a pretty light guy, around 170 pounds. But, you see him, he's doing trail runs, he's rock climbing as well. Now he's doing stone lifting. It's like, just kind of measure it in different ways.
Yeah. Yep. So. Yeah. The group that I train with, we were going to do, the Army came up with a new PT test. And we were playing around with that. And we wanted one day just do an Army PT test, see if we can, where we're at on their point schedule. So that'd be another fun challenge, I think, for people to try.
Nice. Good. Okay. I want to segue a little bit on this, because there's another topic that we were talking about a little bit before that I thought was really interesting. And this is, kind of that term of toxic masculinity that came out, and the APA, the American Psychological Association, came out with like some specific research about this word. And I know you put a lot of time and effort into exactly what this means. And I'd be curious to kind of get your just kind of thoughts about what this whole thing was. I know it's a crazy segue on this, but I think it's important to go over.
Yeah. No, I mean, and just that term toxic masculinity sounds, it just creates emotions. And so I think you and I can probably have a really good discussion about this, kind of segue it, with where I'm at. And this is where people might disagree, but, I think most people are born with a sexual identity. There are some, the minority of people might have an XXY genetic composition or other things, but most people are born male or female. So a lot of times when we do research, we ask, what was your sexual identification at birth? And then, what people identify as now, that's a whole different thing. So like that's none of my business. That's, but I'm talking about sort of where people are born and that sort of thing, and masculinity from that perspective. This wasn't in the APA statement, but this is something that came out from a division of APA afterwards to kind of clarify it. And it said, I'm going to just quote this: needs met through violence, dominance over others, extreme restriction of emotions are at risk for poor physical, psychological, and social outcomes. Yeah, that's obvious. But is that what masculinity is? And like, those type of things like that, that's a question. Like, is masculinity violence? I think, with any trait we have something that's, at a good level and something that's, extreme. And like, I'll give the term, that I'm, much more familiar with is anxiety. If we have no anxiety at all, we're in big trouble. Like we're, gonna take all these risks. We're never gonna have any fear. And, we're gonna get ourselves in trouble. If we have too much, we're going to be so restricted we don't get out of the house and have such a restricted life. So I think with any of these traits, there is a healthy level where we can live. And when you throw out terms like masculinity as violence, dominance, extreme restriction of emotions, that's probably the one extreme of masculinity. I think we could probably talk about this as achievement, stoicism, adventure, those type of things. If we frame it that way, that's not necessarily such a bad thing. Like, and I think, up to an extreme, it would become a bad thing. But I think that's where maybe I'll start the discussion, is that everything is good and bad at different levels. But
right. Well, and it seems like a lot of times the examples that we see out of these things is always on the extreme sides of stuff, where, I've done a lot of study and a lot of work with people and just different energies, and where we all, the terms we use for it is there's masculine energy and there's feminine energy. The masculine might be more of the kind of get shit done stuff. It's kind of like put your head down, like, chalk things down kind of checklist. It's the logical side of, things like that. Like there's a problem, you just go solve it right away. And then people say it's the feminine energy, where it's more of the creative side of it, where you're thinking through things. So it's a lot more things going on at once. I think we all have those energies within us, and it's just the terms that are put on those says masculine energy versus feminine energy. So it's just that term, all of a sudden now it's like, okay, open up that term, and now it goes into this. And now we know the extreme stuff of toxic masculinity, and it goes into that negative realm right there. When in reality, this is stuff that we all portray, whether you're a man, woman, whatever you identify with. It's like you have both of these energies within you at different marks. And some you might skew a little bit more towards one side versus another, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's toxic on that.
Exactly. Yep. And just like we talk about with training, if I am only a deadlifter, I'm not building much flexibility in my system. Like my respiratory health, my endurance, those are all probably lacking a little bit because I'm only focusing on deadlifting. It's good to have flexibility for health. And I think the same thing goes with psychological health. Like if I have high levels of achievement, I can balance that with, what are, traits like, being empathetic or, other things. Like I think this idea, like even stoicism, like there's a lot of benefit to being stoic, but if I don't have the flexibility, like I'll just give my dumb example. Like I grew up in my dad and I can, talk now about this, but at the time, like I couldn't, like he didn't like me crying. Like I'd learned not to cry as a man. Men don't cry. That's probably not the healthiest. And I remember teaching myself to cry, and this is the most ridiculous thing ever, but like I watched the movie Rocky by myself, and at the end of the movie where he's crying out for Adrian, like I would just like start to cry. Like now I can cry, like I can feel comfortable crying. Like I go to graduation for my university, I see parents happy about their kids, I cry about that. I cry thinking about my daughter's success, all of these type of things. Like I feel comfortable with that, and it feels good to have this flexibility. Also though, like I'm not going to just show my emotions just randomly, grocery store, like, and be overly dramatic and like crying. Like I think there's a place for that. So I have the flexibility of being stoic and keeping things to myself and kind of processing things internally when I need to, but I can also show a wide range of emotions on the other hand. And I think that's that balance.
I think it's funny. I was a guest on a podcast with my friend Tyler Wall earlier this week, and our whole topic was on doing shadow work and the dark side. I'm a writer. I do a lot with writing, and that's helped me a lot in the time. And it's kind of similar with the shadow and with the dark side. If you've ever read anything from someone like Carl Jung or Jordan Peterson's brought this a lot up to date, is like a good man is not a weak man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control, so, and that's within all of us. From there, it's like I think naturally it's not, sometimes we don't feel that it's accustomed to portray emotions out or to go into that asshole side that we can all be at the same way as well. And I love Stoicism. I've, studied a lot with the Stoics, but then there's the other side. You talk to Stu McGill, who talks about his top level guys on the platform about to win a world record. And he says they're ready to commit murder in their mindset when they go up and step to grit that. Like, there is no way they're not pulling that fucking bar off the ground. And it's like, and you could be the most stoic person outside of that, but there's that balance sometimes of extremes that goes into it. And it seems like, this is an emotionally charged topic, I think, in, a lot of society, because there is a lot of toxic shit that's out there, and it should not be, and there needs to be addressed. However, it's not just something that is within everybody, that we could just label everybody of masculine energy or masculinity is a toxic thing. It's like, no, it's a minority of something probably far, far bigger than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and like our training, like hitting the heavy bag, I'm not training to, go into fighting or anything like that. But if I need the strength, like my dog has bad hip, and there's been times, she's 50 pounds. Like, if on a walk, she can't walk anymore, I can pick her up and carry her home. Like, I've got the strength to do that. I'm not training to, go murder somebody, but I have strength reserves where I can handle myself if there's an emergency type of thing. And I'm not training for the apocalypse or, some sort of, great type of thing. But I think restricting ourselves to, never look at that side of ourselves, or look at, like you said, to kind of even, before my deadlift, I was kind of swearing my head a few times. I don't say it out. Maybe if I'm alone, I'll kind of you MRF bar, and I'll say those type of things. But I have to have that flexibility, and I know when to shut it off and when to turn it on. If I never practice it and just restrict my emotions, I think that's another problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you only deal in one side of the energy, if you're only on the masculine side, then eventually the other energies, it's going to, if anything that gets repressed, from psychology right there, it comes back with a vengeance, from there. And, you mentioned Rocky from there. I can't watch Band of Brothers without sobbing, just because it's like, I remember the one episode in there, all of a sudden I'm just like crying by myself. I'm like, what's going on here? Yeah. But I think we all have those things that, can pop up, and that's okay. Like you said, it's different environments that you do that. And those are, emotional things that everybody should explore. And that's why I think really we could tie all of this whole conversation into that balance. This is psychological fission versus fusion right here, right? It's like there's the high intensity stuff that you do, and then there's the other strength stuff where you pamper yourself a little bit more.
Yep.
So it all comes back to balance.
Yep. Yeah, I was feeling a little aggressive yesterday, and just grumpy and on edge, and but I was so productive at work, and I didn't harm anything socially. I didn't, ruin any relationships. I didn't do anything. I harnessed it and used that energy to get a lot of work done. And, that type of thing, again, it's like you said, it's at that balance and harnessing those type of things.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. Being a solo business guy in here, and you're doing everything, you have to have both energies of going on in different things. And it's like, I know I've been in that spot. I could turn it off and just get shit done type stuff. But then the other side, the creative side, okay, I need to do this. And you want to do, it's like finding those things, and and we're talking about balance. Like, it's the easiest thing in the world. This is probably one of the hardest things you can do on a day-by-day basis, especially with your mind to do it. But the more you practice it and the more you find it and not repress it down, then these things are going to pop up, and they're going to help you out. So, Craig, man, this time just always flies by with you, man. This is great. So I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll have to be doing this again soon.
I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I feel like we could go on for a few more hours. So next time, whenever you're ready, I'm ready. So
I'm sure we will. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Dan John too. I just had a conversation with him yesterday, and he said the same exact thing. Everything works for a period of time, then you got to change it. So
that's awesome.
Great. So if people want to, I know you have a few articles out there, and you're always doing some stuff. If people want to check more of the stuff that you got out there, where can they go?
A lot of my stuff's on breaking muscle and StrongFirst. They can Google me and find me if you have specific questions. I love talking to people. So email me. I'm always comfortable with that too. So
Awesome. Good. All right, Craig, till next time.
all right,
Thank you, brother.
it.
All right, listeners,
care.
thank you. Thank you so much for connecting. If you want to follow Craig and check out more of his articles, you know where to do so. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.